Karma, that invisible hand pulling the strings, silently weaving its way through lives like a patient assassin. People think they can outrun it, outsmart it, but karma is far too clever for that. It doesn't chase you, it waits. And when it strikes, it does so with precision, with a cruelty so poetic. Even those who believe themselves untouchable feel its icy grip. Karma doesn't forget. It's not some moral compass. No, it's a force of balance, indifferent, calculating. It doesn't care who you are, what you've done, or how far you've risen. Sooner or later, the scales must tip. And when they do, oh, it's a beautiful thing. People live their lives thinking actions go unpunished, that words whispered in the dark don't echo back in the silence. But karma listens. It waits in the shadows, biding its time, watching every move. You think you're safe, hiding behind your mask, behind the lies you tell yourself. But karma sees through it all. It's patient, and that's what makes it so dangerous. It doesn't need to rush. It waits until the perfect moment, when you're at your highest, when you've convinced yourself you've won, and then it strikes. The fall is always hardest, from the top after all. There's a kind of sick poetry in how karma works. It doesn't always come in the way you expect. Sometimes it's subtle, creeping in like a shadow at dusk, barely noticeable until it's too late. Other times, it's brutal, smashing through your life like a wrecking ball, destroying everything in its path. But the beauty of it? Karma always fits the crime. It doesn't need to be violent. Sometimes the quiet is far more painful. A whisper of regret that eats away at you. A mistake that haunts your every waking moment. Karma doesn't need to raise its voice. It knows how to hurt you in ways you never saw coming. There's no escaping it. No amount of power, no amount of wealth, no amount of influence can shield you from karma's reach. You can't bribe it, can't manipulate it, can't twist it to your will. It's the ultimate equalizer. For every action, there's a consequence. And those consequences never come when you expect them. That's what makes it terrifying. It catches you when you're not looking, when you're comfortable, when you think the worst has passed. Karma waits for the perfect moment, the moment when you're most vulnerable. And then it strikes with the precision of a knife in the dark. People think karma is about justice, about fairness. But justice is a human construct, a flawed idea wrapped in morality. Karma isn't bound by such rules. It doesn't care about right or wrong. It's about balance. You throw something out of alignment, and karma pulls it back. You tip the scales, and karma makes sure they even out. It's not personal. It's universal. You can't escape the math of it, the unyielding logic that says every action has a consequence. And the longer you try to avoid it, the harder it hits when it finally catches up to you. Some think they can outrun it, that if they move fast enough, they can leave karma in the dust. But that's where the real joke lies. Karma isn't chasing anyone, it's waiting. The faster you run, the more tangled you become in its web. Every lie you tell, every wrong move you make, every person you betray, those are the threads karma uses to bind you. And one day, when you're so wrapped up in your own deceit, it gives one sharp tug and you fall. Hard. Karma doesn't need to hunt you down. You do all the work for it. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. People want to believe they can live without consequences, that the past won't catch up to them. But karma always comes for its due. It's not swayed by excuses, by tears, by apologies. Once the scales are tipped, there's no going back. The only thing left to do is watch it unfold, like a storm gathering on the horizon. You can see it coming, but you're powerless to stop it. Karma's design is perfect. It lets you think you've won, that you've escaped, that you're free. And just when you start to believe it, that's when it strikes. It's always at the moment of greatest arrogance that karma delivers its final blow. Ah, the irony of it all. People stir the storm themselves, set the whole thing in motion, and when the sky finally cracks open and the rain pours down, they look up in shock, as if it's some cosmic injustice. They act surprised, offended, outraged, as if they weren't the ones who summoned the storm in the first place. And then, of course, the blame begins. It's never their fault, is it? Never their choices, never their actions. No, the world wronged them. Fate conspired against them. It's easier that way. Easier to stay blind to the chaos they unleashed with their own hands. But here's the thing. Most people are trapped in this cycle. They create their own suffering, sabotage their own peace, and then rage against the storm they themselves have called forth. It's pathetic, really. They can't stand the rain, yet they were the ones who pulled the clouds into the sky. Convention teaches them to act this way. Society whispers that they should follow the script, obey the norms, play the game. And when the game falls apart, when it all crumbles around them, they cry out for someone to save them from the mess they made. It's always the same. They think the storm is something that happened to them, when in reality, it was something they crafted from the inside out. Most people live like this, never stopping to think, never pausing to realize that they are the architects of their own misery. They cling to convention because it feels safe, familiar. But convention breeds discomfort. It lulls you into a false sense of security, making you believe that if you just follow the rules, everything will fall into place. But those rules, they're designed to keep you in line, to keep you stagnant, to keep you spinning in circles. And every time you follow them, every time you conform, you take another step deeper into the storm you've created for yourself. Avoiding this fate takes more than just awareness. It takes defiance, a willingness to break from the script, to walk away from the comfort of convention. Because comfort is a lie. It's the trap that pulls you into the storm, making you believe that staying the course, doing what everyone else does, will somehow protect you. But it's the opposite. Convention is the breeding ground of storms, the place where mediocrity festers, where people become trapped in their own decisions, too afraid to step outside and face the discomfort of real change. Most people don't even realize they're in the storm until it's too late. They think the rain is temporary, just a passing inconvenience. But that's the delusion. The storm doesn't go away on its own. It intensifies. It builds, because it feeds on the very actions that created it. Every decision rooted in fear, every choice made out of convenience, every step taken to avoid discomfort. Those are the things that strengthen the storm. And when the rain starts falling, when the winds begin to howl, those same people look around and ask why their lives are in ruins, never realizing that the storm was the direct result of their own unwillingness to face the truth. The only way to avoid becoming one of those people, the ones who curse the rain they caused, is to break free from the patterns that led them there, to question everything, to refuse the comfort their actions define the game. They strike, they manipulate, they betray, convinced their cruelty will carve out a victory. But the joke's on them, isn't it? Because how they treat you, that's their burden to carry. It's their own karma they're feeding, their own judgment they're sealing. Every insult, every slight, every act of malice, it all comes back around. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it circles back like a predator stalking its prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They think they've escaped, that their actions will disappear into the void. But karma has a long memory. Here's where it gets delicious, though. How you react. That's where your karma comes into play. It's not about what they do. It's about what you do next. That's the real test. People like to think they have power over you with their words, their actions, their petty games. But their actions are just noise. How you respond, that's the symphony. You let them dictate your response, let their venom seep into your veins, and you've lost. But if you choose silence, if you choose to rise above, to remain untouched by their pathetic attempts to pull you down, that's where the real power lies. Most people react on impulse, don't they? Quick to strike back, quick to defend themselves, quick to fall into the very trap that was set for them. It's predictable. It's exactly what those who seek to harm you expect. They expect you to fight, to lash out, to mirror the same darkness they threw at you. But when you don't, when you rise above the storm and let their actions fall into the void, it terrifies them. People expect reactions. They thrive on it. It's how they measure their own worth, by how much they can get under your skin. But when you deny them that satisfaction, when you refuse to play the game by their rules, you hold all the power. Reactions are the chains that bind most people. They're conditioned to believe that every action requires an equal and opposite reaction. But that's where they fall into the trap, believing they need to engage, to fight back, to stoop to the level of those who attack them. What they don't realize is that in reacting, they're giving away their power. They're allowing the aggressor to dictate their emotions, their state of mind. It's a game, and the second you play it, you lose. But when you don't react, when you let the storm rage around you while you remain calm, still, untouched, that's when the tables turn. That's when karma shifts in your favor. How people treat you is a reflection of them, of their insecurities, their failures, their own darkness. It's a projection, an attempt to offload their pain onto you. But the beauty of karma is that those actions don't stain you unless you let them. Their cruelty, their bitterness, their anger, it belongs to them. And by not reacting, by refusing to engage, you leave them to drown in the very poison they tried to throw your way. That's their karma, their consequence. But how you react, that's where you get to decide your own fate. Are you the puppet pulled by their strings? Or do you stand unmoved, watching as they flail against the weight of their own actions? The real power comes from knowing when to act and when to remain still. Most think power is about control, about force, about striking back. But true power, it's in restraint. It's in knowing that you don't have to respond to every insult, every attack. It's in knowing that your reaction, or lack of one, is a reflection of your strength, not theirs. Let them burn themselves out. Let them rage and scream and try to tear you down. Your silence, your calm, is the mirror that reflects their own insignificance. And that's where karma works its magic. Because while they're caught, in the whirlwind of their own creation. You stand outside of it, untouched, unbroken. Ah, choice, the sweetest illusion. People cling to the idea that choice is freedom, that every path laid before them is an open door to endless possibilities. What they forget, what they conveniently ignore, is that with every choice, there's a price, a consequence lurking in the shadows, waiting. The world tells you that you're free to choose, that your destiny is yours to mold, but that freedom, it comes with chains, invisible, unbreakable chains that tighten the moment your decision is made. The trick is not in the choosing, it's in surviving what comes after. You think you're making your own way, don't you? That your choices define you, that your free will is the compass guiding you through life. But every decision, every step you take has a ripple. It echoes into places you cannot see, into consequences you never expected. That's the catch. You can choose the path, but you can't control what that path brings. Once the decision is made, you're no longer the master. The consequences own you now. And the real cruelty? There's no way to know how deep the price will cut until it's too late. People like to think they're above consequence, that their choices are just stepping stones to some grand plan. But choice is a double-edged sword, one side glinting with possibility, the other sharp with repercussions. It doesn't matter how carefully you choose, how much you weigh the options. Once the decision is made, you're at the mercy of fate. The consequences, those are the silent judges, waiting for you at the end of every road. They don't care about intent. They don't care about regret. They care only that the choice was made, and the price must be paid. That's the beauty of it, though. The elegance of consequence. You can't hide from it. Can't beg for mercy, because it's not about cruelty, it's about balance. The universe has a way of tipping the scales, of making sure that every choice, every action comes full circle. You are free to choose, but the moment you decide, you're locked in. The consequences start weaving their web, and by the time you realize you're caught, it's too late. The price will always be paid, one way or another. Ah, the villain. Such an easy role to cast, isn't it? No matter what you do, no matter how righteous you believe your actions to be, someone will always paint you in shadow. You can save a life, burn a bridge, speak the harshest of truths, or simply exist. And to someone, somewhere, you become the monster lurking in the corners of their story. That's the beauty of it, really. People love their heroes, but they need their villains. They need someone to blame, someone to bear the weight of their resentment, their envy, their disappointments. And you're the perfect candidate. People need their villains more than they need their saviors. Heroes are fleeting, a moment of light in the chaos. But villains, they endure. They are the eternal scapegoat, the excuse for every failure, the reason for every misstep. The villain is necessary, a constant presence in the background of someone else's narrative, so they never have to take responsibility for their own downfall. And the more you try to avoid it, the tighter the label sticks. The more you try to justify, to explain, the deeper you sink into the role that's been assigned to you. That's the trick, though. The villain never gets the luxury of being understood. You don't get a chance to explain your side of the story because the narrative is already written, and your role in it is clear. You're the villain, the outsider, the disruptor. And no matter how many times you try to rewrite the script, It's already etched into the minds of those who need you to be the villain. They need their enemy, their antagonist. Because without you, they'd have to confront the chaos inside themselves.